Computer. Okay, great. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Feminine, Divine, and Sacred Masculine Convergence Room on Peace Weekend. And we have today's session on rediscovering the feminine divine as has been expressed and given to us in Indian antiquity. I have with me two panelists today, Nilesh Neelakant Oak and Madhu Kishwar, who will be joining us after Nilesh's presentation. We have with us Madhu Kishwar, a celebrated author and researcher. And before I hand over to you, I'd just like to read a brief bio. She was a senior fellow at the Center of Studies of Developmental Societies and one minute, let me just get this going. I'm sorry. And Director of Indic Studies project at the CSDS till 2016. She is currently the Maulana Azad National Professor of the Indian Council for Social Science Research. Her life work represents a combination of academic scholarship, research-based social and legal activism, including public interest litigation and investigative journalism on issues concerning the most neglected strata of society, as well as blasting the negative stereotype of Indian society. Madhu's work has been areas to include and not confined to law, liberty and livelihoods, aimed at evolving a pro-poor agenda of economic reforms in India, gender justice while avoiding the Zanana Dabba approach to women's issues, a people-centric study of diverse cultures and faith traditions in the Indic universities, and socially sensitive approach to strengthening human rights in India and bridging divides rather than promoting class-caste wars in the name of social justice. She is known for her legal aid and PIL work on behalf of vulnerable groups. So, Madhu, I hand this over to you. Take it away from here. You need to unmute yourself. Please unmute yourself. Yeah.
Unmute. Am I audible now? Namaste
Yes,
to everybody.
Yes, you are audible.
You've already covered a lot of ground with Nilesh ji. So I don't know if I'll be repeating some since I could not of that lecture. If I am repeating, in that case, please.
Madhuji, you're frozen. Is your connection? We can't hear you, Madhuji. Nilesh, would you be able to spotlight her? I think she's having some technical problem. Okay, I think she needs to go back and join back in. Right, great. Yes, we have you back live, but your audio, you're muted. Yeah, right, great.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Okay, before I start, I'd like to clarify I'm not a Maulana of ICSSR. I'm a national professor of Indian Council. I've been awarded national professorship by the Indian Council of Social Science Research. My internet connection, I'm told, is going to be unstable because I am in this remote village near Haridwar, which doesn't have very good connectivity. So if things go haywire, well, you have no choice but to put up with it. So as I mentioned at the outset, I'm going to talk about the living and ever expanding tradition of goddess worship in India. Am I audible? Can
Yes.
you please confirm? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. One essential tenet of Hinduism, pre-Vedic, Vedic, and post-Vedic, is that Shakti, the feminine energy, is believed to represent primeval creative principle underlying the cosmos. She is the energizing force of all divinity, of every being and everything. Shakti is known by the generic name Devi, derived from the Sanskrit word Div, meaning to shine. Our great epics, the Vedas, as well as Puranic literature, give a whole array of names and attributes to the universal feminine power, and the various goddesses take on distinct iconographic forms. For example, Sri Lakshmi, will you open the I'm going to do screen share.
Uh, can
Please enable screen share. I have a PPT,
Yeah, 1 minute.
a small PPT, which I rustled together in haste
Wait,
since
wait, wait,
I'm
wait,
far
wait.
away from
Yeah,
Let me
my
make you
home and office.
host. I made
yeah,
you host.
yeah, good. Go to
Yes.
more. Yeah,
Okay.
okay. Perfect.
Can you screen share now? Is that the right way, Nilesh?
Can you
Have I
see?
done the right thing?
Yes, that yeah, you've done it. Madhuji,
Okay.
you should able to share the screen now.
Can you see the presentation?
Yes, we
Yes,
do.
yes,
Yes.
yes. Go
Okay.
into, yeah, great.
Hmm.
Okay.
So Sri Lakshmi is celebrated as the goddess of wealth and prosperity, Ma Saraswati as the presiding deity of the arts and knowledge, Usha, the goddess of dawn, is the dispeller of ignorance, Durga is the vanquisher of evil, Earth itself is worshipped as the goddess Prithvi, and hence in the last century, Bharat Bhumi, the land mass that constitutes India, has come to be worshipped as Ma Bharati. More of that little later. It is significant that the knowledge aspect of the Devi is represented by a Shakti cluster of 10 goddesses known as Dasa Mahavidyas, or the 10 great transcendental wisdoms that encompass the entire universe of knowledge. Since the cosmic energy is feminine, almost every devata or the male deity gets diminished without his Shakti. The male gods are incomplete, even powerless, without a consort, barring rare exceptions like Dattatreya, who remains single. But Shakti is complete in herself because her existence does not depend on any extraneous power. In fact, the goddesses become even more powerful in their non consort avatars. Um, I will talk greater length on this later, but just to give you quick examples. For example, Ma Parvati is the consort of Lord Shiva. Radha is Krishna's beloved. Ma Sita is the wife of Rama, a loved, worshipped, and revered. But it's the non-consort goddesses like Chandi, Durga, Kali, and a whole range of their regional versions who are both revered and feared. None dare invoke their wrath. No male deity is as feared as are the non-consort avatar of Devis. When the energies of Devatas prove inadequate, they have to turn to Devi for protection. For example, the great goddess Durga, who was born from the energies of Devatas when they suffered crushing defeats in the long drawn out battle with the Asuras, she's worshipped as the vanquisher of evil. Her battle represents a universal war between knowledge and ignorance, truth and falsehood, oppressor and the oppressed. But she also promises that as Shakambari, she would nourish the world in times of need with the vegetation grown from her body, and that in a terrible form, she would deliver her worshippers from their enemies. She needs no male to legitimize her power, nor is she dependent on the need to conciliate any male divinity. I'm not suggesting that there's any conflict, male-female conflict at all. It is not gender war scenario, but just to emphasize that the female deities are far more powerful than even male deities in the Hindu tradition. The all-powerful feminine force assumes diverse forms, taking on different avatars to fulfill varied purposes at different times. In a Mahakali or Chandi Roop, she's terrifying, uncontrollable, and has the power to destroy the whole universe. In a Parvati avatar, she's the unconditionally nurturing mother. In a Sita avatar, she's an ideal daughter, ideal wife, daughter-in-law, and a compassionate, forgiving mother. In a Radha avatar, she appears as a besotted lover of Krishna. And Radha, though she is not wedded to Krishna, has pride of place by Krishna's side in every temple, in every Hindu temple in India. In all prayers, her name comes before Krishna as also that of Sita before Ram, Jai Siya Ram. That's how people, it's a popular greeting. Sita's name comes before. So also Radha's name before Krishna. Another special feature of Hindu Sanatana Dharma is that there is no sharp divide between the divine and the human. Various gods and goddesses take avatar and descend on earth to appear sometimes in the form of ordinary mortals in intimate familial relationships and often in new divine incarnations. Even though goddess worship is a living and thriving tradition in India from the time of Harappan culture, which is dated as being 5,000 to 10,000 years old, there's no definite date yet. It could even be older. We don't know yet. Much more work needs to be done to date the Hindu civilization. Now, some ancient goddesses have continued to hold sway, while others have lost their preeminence, even though goddess worship per se is a continuing tradition in India. There are also instances of new goddesses taking avatar. Here are three among many examples of such new incarnations. One, Bharat Mata or Mother India. She acquired preeminence during the freedom movement from colonial rule to represent enslaved Mother India, calling out to her sons to free her from colonial bondage. As mentioned earlier, Ma Bharati is in a way an extension of Ma Prithvi, the Mother Earth. The sacredness attached to Ma Bharati is evident from the fact that Hindus refer to India as Punya Bhumi, that is sacred land. It is no exaggeration to say that today, commitment to Ma Bharati or Mother India is treated as the sure short litmus test of being a patriotic Indian, no matter what religion a person follows. You can go against the Constitution of India, challenge it, want it revised, but any disrespect shown to Mother India is something people are not very comfortable with. You may or may not worship any of the traditional Hindu deities. You can even be an atheist, but loyalty to Mother India is increasingly treated as a non-negotiable. And Vande Mataram, that is, Hail Mother, salute to the Mother, is the slogan which was popularized by a Bengali writer of the freedom movement who wrote a beautiful poem with that name. Now, second recent avatar is Santoshi Ma. She gained popular currency thanks to a Bollywood film released in the early 1970s. The film was titled Jai Santoshi Ma, which is Hail Santoshi Mother. And Santoshi, the word Santosh refers to contentment. She combines some of the qualities of non-consort goddesses with those of benign consort goddesses. The Shakti form of goddesses come to the aid of human beings and gods in periods of cosmic darkness by killing the demons that threaten the cosmic order. But Santoshi Ma, being a modern goddess, did not establish herself or did not need to establish herself by annihilating any particular demon. Instead, her miraculous powers come to the rescue of her devotees who are being harassed and tyrannized by fellow human beings. She is particularly popular among women, especially married women, who observe fasts on Fridays as symbolic penance in order to achieve their desired goals and get the desired boons from her. So she's a boon giving, contentment giving goddess. The third, more recent arrival is our very own Devi Swachhnarayani, a new goddess who took avatar to come to our aid when we at Manushi, the human rights, women's rights organization that I founded long years ago, when we were facing murderous attacks on account of our work for law and policy reform for street vendors and trying to protect them from extortionist mafias. In most parts of the modern world, street hawkers are the most harassed and tyrannized sections among the self-employed poor. Local governments and the police in most countries treat them as illegal encroachers on public land, even though they provide much needed services for the urban population. This is how Ma Swachhnarayani came into being. While battling with the government to protect the livelihood rights of street hawkers who are fleeced mercilessly by the combined might of the police, municipal officials, and politicians, corrupt politicians, on account of their illegal status, that is, hawkers almost everywhere are not given proper licenses to trade, and trading without license is treated as an illegal activity the world over. It's true in New York, it's true in Moscow, it's true in Spain. I saw it in London, this cat and mouse game that the police play with the hawkers. Now, while we were battling, we found that to get them legal status, to get them their livelihood rights protected by the government through due process of law, we found that the chaos and squalor created by vendors in India creates deep prejudice against them in the minds of even those who use their services. Therefore, to drive home the message that cleaning one's physical environment is as sacred a duty of every citizen as is cleansing our system of governance of corruption and abuse of power, from August 2001, we began the practice of worshipping the humble broom with all the rituals that go with worshipping regular deities. And that's one of the most uplifting things about India. You know, if I choose to treat the humble broom as my sacred deity, nobody dare tell me, no, how dare you do that? You're supposed to worship X, Y, and Z. I can pick and choose my iconography, my own avatar or the form of goddess that I wish, and give her the attributes that I think my goddess needs to have in order to assist us in battling the demons of today. So when we began worshipping the humble broom with all the rituals that go with worshipping regular deities, the idea was to emphasize that this task should not be looked down upon with disdain and handed over to lowly paid sweepers who are treated, as lower class of people for performing this vital service for society. Slowly, our broom deity acquired many more attributes that are required in the contemporary world to battle corruption, tyranny of the government machinery, and to establish just norms for protection of vulnerable groups in society. And I'm not talking only about India. I think this is true. My description of the ways in which governments function, I think, is globally relevant. So the broom deity slowly acquired many more attributes and came to represent a creative amalgam of the traditional female trinity, the pan-India trinity, Durga, Lakshmi, and Saraswati, with many new attributes and powers required to meet contemporary challenges. Let me describe the powers and attributes of our 10-armed Swachhnarayani, with each hand carrying a unique weapon. First, of course, the cleaning broom, which symbolizes our respect for cleanliness of the physical environment, as well as our resolve to cleanse the government machinery of corruption. The broom also represents the strength that comes from unity. Each stick that constitutes the broom is by itself weak and can be easily broken into pieces. Alone, it is of no value. However, when the same sticks are tied together for a common purpose, they cannot be broken except by pulling them apart. This gave the message that vendors have a chance of winning their battle only they stay united against the demonic forces exploiting and tyrannizing them. The second hand, you see, she carries a mini clock to emphasize the need to change with changing times and dismantle all the archaic colonial restrictions and laws that are still prevalent in India and act as an instrument of exploitation and tyranny. The third hand carries a coin in hand held in Abhay Mudra, Abhay meaning be fearless. It's placed in the palm of the goddess, the coin, held in Abhay Mudra to communicate the message that citizens have a right to earn a dignified livelihood without fear, harassment, and extortion. Then the next hand has a weighing balance, symbolizing commitment to social justice and careful weighing of truth and untruth, as well as honest evaluation of issues and ground reality. The video camera in one of our hands reminds us that, and our policymakers, that our laws need to take careful account of ground reality. A large part of the success of our campaign for policy and law reform for street vendors, incidentally, I drafted the new All India legislation for the Government of India, and with some amendments, it became law in 2014. A large part of the success of our campaign for policy and law reform for street vendors was due to our recording on videotape the human rights violations of vendors and using the documentary films we made on their problems as a tool of campaigning and lobbying. And that's why our goddess always has a camera in hand. That's our big weapon. Diya, or an earthen lamp, symbolizes dispelling of darkness and bringing hope for the poor and vulnerable. A calculator in one hand to remind us to keep honest accounts of all our financial dealings and demand similar financial accountability and transparency from the government. Then she also holds a pen, which is a symbol, the kalam is a symbol of Ma Saraswati, symbol of wisdom and learning, as well as a reminder that the pen is mightier than any sword. Conch shell symbolizes purity as well as a clarion call for self-organization of citizens so that they can become active players in democratizing governance. Then there's the 10th hand has a stalk of barley to symbolize multiplication of wealth as well as the spread of the message. Just as one seed can produce an unlimited number of grains, so also this modest initiative became the harbinger for many more endeavors to strengthen the rights of citizens. Finally, the lotus flower on which the goddess stands, just as Lakshmi, goddess Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth, stands on a lotus flower, conveys the need to create beauty and prosperity by enabling people to move out of squalor and poverty. While the foremost symbol of Swachhnarayani is the broom representing her creative energy to cleanse wrongdoing, she's as much the goddess of self-discipline or Atma Sayam. the power of the individual as a member of a group to create order and withstand. वो नहीं करो अभी, goddess की picture ले आओ, जो last में है, जो पहले में थी सबसे में, yeah, just keep that on. To create order and withstand chaos. Now, I mentioned this earlier in passing, that there are two distinct manifestations of Hindu goddesses. The benign consort goddesses like Ma Parvati, Ma Sita, Ma Lakshmi. These are all revered but not feared. The other kind of goddesses are non-consort goddesses. They are far more numerous and culturally more powerful. Each region, often each village in India, worships its own local version of the Chandi Durga type of deity. Such goddesses have some common features. Frequently, the story of their origin is derived from that of a woman, an ordinary woman, who transformed herself into a ferocious being in order to defend herself, her village, or a community from wrongdoers. The all-pervasive religious folklore has thus made available to the women of India certain powerful ways of living on their own terms. This includes the socially and culturally sanctioned right to assume the Durga Chandi Roop to defend not only herself from wrong, but also society at large. Hindu Devis and Devatas are not distant heavenly figures, not sitting up there in the clouds, but are a living presence in most people's lives. Even though they issue no commandments nor expect blind allegiance, unlike the Abrahamic gods, they don't get offended if you choose to ignore them. And that's, I think, one of the most charming aspects of Hindu Sanatana Dharma. You can ignore God, you can quarrel with your Devis and Devatas. In fact, even Bollywood films have a lot of these rebellious dialogues with, especially with Devi avatars, whether it's Ma Durga or some other. Whenever something goes wrong, the hero or the heroine will come and complain and actually quarrel, saying, how can you do this to me when I've been doing all the, so you can also disown them if you like, and they're not going to punish you, be vengeful, whatever. In Sanatan Dharma, the divine dwells within each human being as well as in every sentient and non-sentient being. And each human being has it in him or her to rise to the status of divine, to become Sita-like or Saraswati Rupi. One comes across mini Durgas and Sakshat Saraswatis all over the country. One constantly meets living incarnations of the divine in everyday life. And I'm saying now because I'm saying that, but they're treated in their own community, in their own village, in their own biradri, in that manner. I have come across countless such women who are given the same kind of reverence that you would to the divine form that you worship in a temple. It is very common, for example, for a dutiful son to be praised as Ram incarnate, or a talented daughter to be commended as a virtual Saraswati. I have often heard a happy and satisfied mother-in-law refer to her daughter-in-law as the coming of Lakshmi incarnate into her home. Frequently, their worldly behavior likes are genuinely lovable and inspiring in the way they live up to their chosen commitments. You don't have to do grand things necessarily, but in the limited context, if you incorporate all the qualities that are associated with Ma Saraswati or Ma Durga, well, then you get the kind of respect that people reserve for our Devis. A fearless woman who battles wrongdoings in society more often than not gets to be treated as Durga incarnate, and women who manifest Durga-like qualities command special respect and deference, at least certainly within their kinship group, even if they are unknown in the larger public domain. I remember that as a child, whenever someone tried to bully me to do something I didn't want to, my mother would warn the others, those bullies, saying, "Don't you provoke her into manifesting her Durga Chandi Roop. She can't be bullied into submission, so keep off." Thus, very early on, my relatives understood and others around me that it was best to be careful about stepping on my toes. Even before I became a Durga devotee, I unconsciously began to I'm being a little facetious, play Durga with remarkable success in dealing with a whole range of situations from sexual harassment to intervening between two groups of riotous men to bringing under control neighborhood drunkards and wife beaters. For instance, if I heard sounds of a woman being beaten and crying in my neighborhood at night, even if it was late past midnight, I would barge into that house all alone and get the man to realize that beating his wife was simply not acceptable. There were times when the concerned men were drunk, but I invariably succeeded in stopping the violence. On one occasion, I remember, in freezing cold night of December, I made the drunkard husband stand underneath a cold shower to bring down his temper. On each such occasion, the next day, the man would come and apologize instead of holding it against me. And that is also because most people respond to domestic violence by calling the police. I would never do that, and I would not allow my neighbors to do that also, because once the police comes, the whole thing gets complicated, and the next morning, the woman herself, she doesn't want the father of her children in jail, because that brings a different kind of a stigma. So very often women would themselves beg the police to cancel the case. And I realized that neighborhood watch is far more effective a way of dealing with domestic violence than bringing in the police, taking the woman to court. That will take hundreds of years, and the court case will drag on with uncertain results. And it's not easy for children, especially women with children, to deal with a situation where the father of their children is in jail. And so it's much better that you discipline the man than to hand him over to a police, which usually only know how to brutalize people further. Now, this is not at all to claim that I have any divine power, but only to illustrate that whenever a woman displays courage for a righteous cause, our society accepts the authority with grace, provided one acts without malice and as a well-wisher, not as a hostile outsider. And my well-wishing was evident from the fact that I was now willing to call the police and hand the man over to them. So they felt protected by my intervention instead of feeling threatened. Thus, every village in India has its Gram Devi or Devata, the village Devi or male or female
I think we lost the link, or
Yeah,
she's still
well,
there.
she's there, but we've lost her audio link. Well, Madhu, that was an absolutely powerful presentation and a powerful explanation and description of how the divine feminine is manifested and uh, revered in modern times. And I'm so grateful to you for sharing with us the presence of Mata Swachhnarayani, who seems to be the immediate urgent need of the day, where we need to clean up, come together, clean up our systems, come together as people. The broom, I love your explanation and description of the broom being woven together to act as one. And in this powerful event, in this powerful week of the Peace
May I
Week.
continue or hello?
Oh, We thought we had lost you for good.
No, I'm here. If you let me finish, I'll do it in 5
Please,
minutes.
please. Let me just say one thing that I'm so grateful for your sharing the goddess Swachhnarayani, who is especially the concept of the broom, which is so important for today's day and age, where people need to come together, because without humanity coming together, establishing peace on earth is not going to happen. And we need to use that broom to clean up the systems that are causing the disharmony, causing the wars, causing the pain, and causing the disruption. So
Okay.
we
Thank you.
welcome Swachhnarayani into this event with absolute reverence and gratitude. So go ahead and
I'll
finish.
also at the end play a few parts of the Arati, the song of Devi Swachnarayani at the end. But may I continue?
Yeah, please, Madhu, please.
Okay. So I was saying every village in India has its Gram Devi or Devata. The Gram Devatas are usually connected with extreme piety, but all the legends surrounding Gram Devis tell us of ordinary women who felt outraged by the acts of some adharmi, some evildoer who caused harm to society. Their response to such desecration is to rise in terrible fury and thereby grow in stature, so that they are able to span both heaven and earth. In each case, they either destroyed the devilish persona or punished him appropriately. Their power of destruction, born out of righteous rage, terrorizes everybody into submission. But once their rage has achieved its purpose, and when the devotees are ready to propitiate the Devi, these Devis can be relied upon for protection as well as healing and showering bounties. Theirs are myths of ascent from human to divine, rather than of descent from divine to the human. Any woman who manifests extraordinary strength and who is believed to be her own mistress, totally unafraid of men, begins to be treated with special awe and reverence, and often commands unconditional obedience in a social circle, including from men, as did, for example, Indira Gandhi, who was celebrated as a virtual Durga for a time period, for a brief time period of her life. She began to lose her hold on levers of power only after she turned dictatorial and suspended civil liberties and jailed all her key opponents by declaring an emergency. Most importantly, she lost her aura when it became clear that her main priority was to hand over power to her sons, even at the cost of national interest, and that she had become dependent on her younger son Sanjay, who was beginning to call the shots in politics and governance. So the moment people realize she's not the strong and almighty Durga, that she is actually dependent on this rather mediocre son and a rather whimsical son of hers, she wasn't treated the same way, and also because she turned dictatorial. People expected her to be Mother India. Instead, she became the mother of only her own sons. And that's when she lost her glory and was even shunted out of power rather unceremoniously. Not just high-powered women, and this is the most noteworthy thing, as I mentioned before, not just high-powered women like Indira Gandhi, women of even humbler origins have this choice to be treated as virtual Devis, as virtual Durgas, as Saraswatis. And this continuing tradition of worshipping not just the divine in temples, the feminine divine in temples for ritual worship, but this belief that that divine exists within every woman, that every woman is Shakti incarnate. It's for her to realize that Shakti, that Shakti doesn't lie just in the temples and the image of the goddess in the temple, but it lies within each woman, each girl child. And that's why there are elaborate rituals for worshipping girl children during Navratras, for example, little girls are treated as Devis incarnate, and the birth of a daughter, often celebrated as the coming of Lakshmi into the house. When the daughter-in-law comes into the house, she soaks her feet in before entering the house in turmeric paste and enters, and those foot marks are treated as symbols of coming of Lakshmi, and many families actually preserve those for generations to come. So this tradition creates especially the worship of non-consort goddesses, creates a unique kind of social space in our otherwise marriage-obsessed culture for women who wish to opt out of matrimony altogether. This has also made voluntary celibacy a very respected choice for women. In many modern cultures, especially those influenced by crackpot Freudian theories, sexual abstinence is seen as an unhealthy aberration that is supposed to lead to all kinds of neurosis and a disoriented personality. In India, however, we are still heavily inclined towards the opposite tradition that holds that voluntary sexual abstinence, not enforced, voluntary sexual abstinence bestows extraordinary powers on human beings, including women, not just men, but many of the most revered women in Indian dharmic history, as well as in modern history, the freedom movement, the social reform movements of 19th century, they opted out of sexual relations altogether. And many walked out of marriages or refused to get married. They've been treated as virtual goddesses, so much so that the gods come to fear them and are compelled to do their bidding. That's part of uh, legends surrounding such women, and of which we have plenty. We are fortunate that men in India are habituated to fearing and respecting strong female figures, unlike in the West, where strong women, it's taken a lot of ideological drubbing to make men accept strong women, but otherwise they still are locked in that mindset which says Eve was made out of Adam's rib. And so she's a temptress, she is the cause of man's downfall, and all the rest of it. Since men in India are habituated to fearing and respecting strong female figures, it's noteworthy that the very same man who thinks nothing of beating his wife or daughter has no psychological barrier to bowing in reverence and fear before a Ma Durga, whether one in temple or in real life. A strong woman can treat men like little kids. And maybe that's why I learned to act as the elder sister. I call it the Didi Amma advantage, or the motherly figure. And I would address men sometimes even older to me as Raja Bhaiya, dear brother, or Raja Beta, darling son, so to establish the power equation very clearly. Because the moment you address them in that manner, you're making it clear you expect and you deserve respect, and you're certainly not a sexual object to be played with. So that, I think, as a strategy, at least has worked for not just for me. I know many women who have tried it.
We have lost your audio, Madhu. We seem to have lost your feed. You are signed in, but we've lost your audio. Yes, we have. Okay. Okay, we have you back, but your
Are you back?
audio. Yeah.
You're back. Just half a minute to give you a glimpse of the Arti, the song of Ma Swachhnarayani. Would you like to hear it for
Yeah,
just
please.
this is we are
What?
singing with street vendors.
Yeah. Could you
In
explain? Could you explain to the audience exactly what an arti is and why it is done?
yeah, yeah. The symbols.
I've lost your audio. Oh, we can't hear you, Madhuji. Madhuji, you're totally mute, inaudible. We've lost your feed.
जय जय स्वच्छ नारायणी, जय जय स्वच्छ नारायणी, जय जय स्वच्छ नारायणी, जय जय स्वच्छ नारायणी, जन जन की सुखदायिनी, जन जन की सुखदायिनी, जन जन की सुखदायिनी, जन जन की सुखदायिनी, एक हाथ में झाड़ू रखती भ्रष्टाचार कुहारिनी, एक हाथ में झाड़ू रखती भ्रष्टाचार कुहारिनी, आई है तो जुल्म मिटाएगी, ये तो नया ज़माना लाएगी, ये तो नया ज़माना लाएगी। सीख सीख में शक्ति बढ़ती, एक सीख कुछ नहीं कर सकती, सीख सीख में शक्ति बढ़ती, एक सीख कुछ नहीं कर सकती, हो एकजुट हो हमें सिखाती माता बुद्धि दायिनी, आई है तो जुल्म मिटाएगी, ये तो नया ज़माना लाएगी, ये तो नया ज़माना लाएगी। एक हाथ में ये कैमरा, इसमें सबका कर्म है भरा, एक हाथ में ये कैमरा, इसमें सबका कर्म है भरा, अफसर नौकर कोई न छूटे, सबका रखती लेखा जोखा, अफसर नौकर कोई न छूटे, सबका रखती लेखा जोखा, यथा योग्य फलदायिनी माँ, यथा योग्य फलदायिनी, यथा योग्य फलदायिनी माँ, यथा योग्य फलदायिनी, आई है तो जुल्म मिटाएगी, ये तो नया ज़माना
Can't hear you.
Hello?
Yeah, now we can hear you.
I have
Can't
just sent you. I didn't complete it thinking many are not understanding. But what I have done is I have sent you the Arati in Hindi and English along with the posters. So if you wish to post it for those who would like to follow it up or are interested, can do so. And I'll conclude with this. So, any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Madhuji, the best thing is you email me the link and I will attach it with the description into the video channel when we put it in so that people can access the Aarti. But actually, this is really wonderful because it...
I have done so already.
Have you put it in the chat? No. You've emailed it to me.
No, I emailed it.
Okay,
Yeah.
fine. I will take it up from there and merge it into the description of the video when we upload it so that people have access to it. This has been actually an absolutely brilliant and wonderful session, Madhuji. And you have showcased so beautifully that the feminine divine is actually evolving and adaptable and emerges with the needs of the time to serve the needs of the time. And it isn't necessarily stuck in the fixed narratives, which sometimes may not be relevant for what is required for us on planet Earth. So, so for our viewers, thank you for joining us on this amazing session where we've had two absolutely wonderfully brilliant and educative, at least I leave the session today much better informed and much more in knowing of the aspects and various concepts of divinity that need to be embraced in today's day and age. So with that, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you in our continuing events till the 21st of September, which is United Nations Peace Day. So.